Well, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the After Stangs Show, live from Stanford Stadium here in Palo Alto, California. I'm Dean Ralsky. It's a solo show tonight following SMU's 40-10 win over the Stanford Cardinal. It was a game where SMU got off to about as hot of a start as you could ask for. It was Kevin Jennings finding Moochie Dixon over the middle for an 87-yard touchdown to get things going, and it didn't end there. Kevin Jennings would have 3 touchdown passes by the end of the first quarter, and the Mustangs were up 21-0, really in the blink of an eye. The second touchdown was a lovely, I believe, 45-yard touchdown where Kevin Jennings lofted one deep and found Keyshawn Smith in the end zone. And then the third passing touchdown was a 38-yard pass where R.J. Maryland was wide open, similar to that Jordan Hudson flea flicker a couple weeks ago where he just kind of backed his way into the end zone. That's what R.J. Maryland did, and the Mustangs were up 21-0. But with the win, the Mustangs 6-1, bowl eligible, 3-0 in conference play, and still have it all to play for the second half of the season. Now, although the score was 40-10, there were certainly some areas where the Mustangs would like to improve moving forward. The defense, I thought, played great throughout. You know, Jafari Harvey with 2 sacks. Isaiah Smith had a great game. The defensive line was dominant throughout, and the secondary made some plays too, including Isaiah Wacobia, who got his second interception in as many weeks. But the offense and special teams certainly still have some areas to improve. So certainly still some work to be done on special teams. On a positive side for special teams, Isaac Pearson had a really nice game, including one punt that was downed almost inside the 1-yard line, so nice job for him. Colin Rogers drilled a 51-yard field goal right at the end of the first half. That put the Mustangs up 31-7 at the end of the first half. And they just kind of cruised through the rest of the game. It wasn't a jaw-dropping performance from the offense. The start might have been. But after that 21-0 sprint from the Mustang offense, they cooled down a little bit. No Brashard Smith in the first half. We heard from Coach Lashley after the game that, you know, he prioritizes the football culture that he has, and he wants his players to show up to class and not be late to team meetings or coach meetings with coaches. And so kind of hinted at maybe that's why Brashard Smith missed the first half on offense. He did return a couple of kicks in the first half, but that was it for him. And then he came in the second half and did his thing, averaged over 8 yards per carry, including a 40-yard rush where he sort of spinned out of a tackle and then got to the sideline for, again, a 40-yard carry. And so SMU moving forward now, they've got Duke coming up next week, who, you know, had a shaky game against Florida State, it's safe to say. They ended up winning the game. They only won, I believe it was 23-16, so won by 1 possession. Of course, SMU beat Florida State 42-16, so a little bit of a difference there. But coming off of the bye, SMU started fast. Coach Lashley said he was maybe a little bit worried about that coming into this game. Would they, you know, bring their own energy, as Kevin Jennings said in the post-game press conference? They had to create their own energy. They knew this wasn't going to be maybe the most intimidating atmosphere, and actually SMU Nation, Mustang Nation, traveled really well in this one. It was a great setting in the pregame, in the tailgating, of course, hosted by Epic Wines. But when they got to the game too, you heard SMU chants. You could hear from the press box anywhere in the stadium, and so Mustang Nation imposed their will on this game. Also wanted to shout out Mosquito Shield for sponsoring the After Stangs Show. Look, guys, we are in the heart of the football season. The temperatures in Dallas are cooling off, but they're not cold by any means, and so the mosquitoes are still out there. So make sure you get to enjoy what should set up to be a special SMU football season and college football season by reaching out to Mosquito Shield and their staff so you can watch those games out on your porch, out in the backyard, wherever you watch your games, and just have the best environment while also making sure you're not getting bitten up by mosquitoes. So reach out to Mosquito Shield and make sure you can enjoy the rest of the college football season. Earlier in the week, Coach Lashley had talked about preparing for Ashton Daniels and the dual threat quarterback that he is, but this SMU defense only saw him for a couple of drives. The defense had done a great job limiting him in those first 2 drives. But after that, in came Elijah Brown, the true freshman quarterback for Stanford, who came in and did the best he could. He didn't light SMU up. You know, it didn't get a bunch of help from his receivers. The first interception was tipped up and then caught by Deuce Harmon. He got some help from Eric Ayamanor, who on Stanford's touchdown, it was an unbelievable play from the Stanford wide receiver. But the SMU defense adjusted well to facing a new quarterback. You know, Jafari Harvey talked post-game how they knew Ashton Daniels was a mobile quarterback, so they had to try and contain him. That was kind of the focus of the defensive line. But then the other quarterback came in and they knew he couldn't move around as well, and so they could kind of have more freedom when rushing the quarterback. And you saw that work out for this SMU defense, as it felt like they were getting some nice consistent pressure on the young Stanford quarterback. Now on the offensive side, again, they ran the ball well. Did they run the ball enough? I think they could have run it even more than they did, but they were still averaging right around that 5-yard a carry mark. Super impressive. And it just doesn't matter who's in the backfield, whether it be Brashard Smith, who we know the explosiveness he has, LJ Johnson, who just runs downhill and loves contact and will just fall forward for those extra couple yards, or Roderick Daniels Jr., who we know he can really just do it all, that Swiss Army knife. Or, of course, Kevin Jennings with his legs. So the running game worked well for SMU. I thought the passing game was, of course, great. At the beginning of the game, especially, Kevin Jennings threw for over 200 yards in the first quarter. No one had done that. Hasn't been that long. It was Preston Stone against Navy at the end of last year's regular season. But then Stanford later in the game got some pressure in on Kevin Jennings. I believe he was sacked 3 times tonight, which so far it's an interesting trend. SMU quarterbacks have been sacked 3 times in 3 games, but in the other 4, they haven't been sacked at all. So it's a little bit hit or miss with the offensive line. And maybe part of it was down to a little bit of complacency, I'm not sure, after SMU got off to that hot start. But overall, you can't complain about a 40-10 win, being on the road ACC win. And so you move to 6-1. You've got Duke next week, who's also 6-1. Again, they had a little bit of a shaky performance on Friday night, but they'll be ready to play. Should be a pretty good atmosphere over there in Durham for next Saturday night. Again, you've got the ACC huddle wrapping up behind me. They'll follow SMU to Durham next week for SMU versus Duke. And then you set yourself up for that huge game against Pitt. SMU hasn't played at home since Florida State. It will have been over a month since they've played at home when they get back to take on Pitt. But you can't look too far ahead yet. They moved to 6-1, but they've got another big game ahead of them now. And when you get to that 6-1 record and you win these games, well, then each game becomes more and more important. It's not necessarily even about Pitt being ranked. It's just about getting that next step closer. They're 3-0 in conference play, undefeated. They have it all to play for the rest of the regular season, and you can't let this opportunity go to waste. And I think Rhett Lashley and his staff know that. The players know that. It's a very experienced team, and you've seen them. They haven't, tonight could have been a night where they took Stanford lightly. They kind of could have taken their foot off the gas and thought, yeah, we've got this one. Coming off a bye, we're fresh. But no, again, they got off to that incredibly hot start. And the defense dominated throughout. Long here, but bottom line, SMU wins 40-10. The hot start that we've seen them produce in the last few weeks continued tonight, and that was ultimately what led them to success. They've got Duke next week, 7 p.m. on ACC Network, just like tonight. We'll get to talk to Coach Lashley about injury updates. We know RJ Maryland went down. We didn't really get a clear update on the status of his injury tonight. Hopefully we'll get one on Tuesday when we talk with Coach Lashley. Other injuries, I think there was some cramping tonight, so nothing too serious. Jake Bailey went down. We'll get the full scoop from Coach Lashley later on next week about the status of this team, because coming off the bye, we knew they were going to try and get healthier and recover from these bruises that you'll get from playing all these Power 4 opponents, and Stanford is no different. But SMU wins it by 30. The spread, I believe, closed at around 16.5. They covered comfortably. After they got off to that 21-0 head start, they never gave up that lead. And so we'll look forward to see how they handle maybe a little bit of a tougher environment next week in Durham. We know they handled Louisville quite well. They kind of matched that energy that Louisville brought against them, but it'll be under the lights in Durham, so a little bit of a different environment. But I think SMU is ready for the challenge. And with that, thank you for watching the After Stangs Show. I'm Dean Ralsky. Catch you next time.